Change your heart, change your life, change the planet.
Hey everybody, it's Tim Van Orden, and I'm boot slogging up the old stage road from Bennington to the top of the mountain in Woodford. And I thought I would take this opportunity to make another What I've Learned video. Because as I'm going up here, I'm present to a lesson that I learned a couple years ago while running up this road. Today, as you can probably see, the road is snow covered and there's some ice underneath the snow because four-wheelers and snowmobiles have packed it down, and I'm in heavy boots with heavy sneakers inside them, running on ice and snow up a mountain that's about consistent 20% slope, so it's steep, and I'm really feeling the workout. And I imagined a couple years ago doing this workout and how there was a truck that passed me at the bottom. There was a whole family, young guy, I'd say mid-20s, girlfriend or wife, and two kids in the back. And it starts out paved, and it's still very steep, about 20%. But then within a couple hundred meters, it becomes rock and dirt the rest of the way. And they blew by me, doing like 40 miles an hour, and didn't pay me any attention because I was just plodding. But I saw up ahead when they hit the rocky, dirty, bouncy stream that the road has become, they slowed down and they were going back and forth across the trail, and the big rocks they really had to slow down on, and I watched them up ahead of me, and that became the point of focus rather than what I was feeling. I was kind of mesmerized by watching this truck ahead of me. And after about half a mile, I realized that the truck was getting closer to me, meaning I was catching it. And when I realized that, I was like, whoo, that's the new goal. Catch the truck before it reaches the top of the mountain. And it's a 2-mile climb. Well, 2.5 to the very summit, but there's a turn, and it was likely that this truck was going to take that turn. So I said, all right, I've got about 1.5 miles to catch that truck. And it was probably a good 200 meters ahead of me at this point, because the road is pretty straight up the mountain. There's no turns in it. And that motivated me to pick up the speed. And little by little, I was making ground on this truck. And little by little, I felt stronger and stronger and more motivated as that finish line moved closer and closer towards me. And part of it was just the playfulness of the challenge. Can I catch a machine that's, I don't know, 150 horsepower or whatever a truck engine is? It's kind of like the old John Henry story where, you know, John Henry has a sledgehammer and some spikes, and he's going to carve the tunnel through the mountain, and he's going to race the new machine that's eventually going to put him out of work. And he beats the machine, but then collapses dead. So it was a John Henry moment, and I think I made a video about it. If I can find it, I'll link to it. And so eventually, I was close enough that they could see me in the rearview mirror. And the kids were now looking out the back window of this truck, because it was a two-seater truck where there was a back seat behind the front. And these kids just were glued to the back window. And I kept seeing them like turn around and yelling to their parents, like, that guy's catching us. And I'd see the man and woman turn around, or I'd see the guy look in the rearview mirror, because I was close enough now to see that. And I could even hear them. And, come on, Dad, speed up, he's gonna catch us, come on, Dad. And that reminded me of the movie The Terminator 2, where I think it's Robert Patrick. He's the guy made out of liquid metal, and he's dressed like a cop often, and he's chasing them down the road, and he's got that incredibly stern look on his face with those piercing eyes, and he's catching their car. He's running, but he's a machine, and he's catching this car. The new machine is catching the old machine. And I felt like that. I felt like I'm a machine right now. I've trained my body to be a machine, and I'm gonna catch not a biological machine, but an engineered machine. And about 300 meters before the summit, I pulled up next to them, and they had their windows down, and they were just like, oh my God, and just in disbelief. And I was all excited and blew past them. And that flashed back today as I struggle to make it up this mountain right now. And what occurred to me was, I didn't catch that truck because I have a bigger engine. It's not the reason. I caught that truck because I've got better shock absorbers, because I can handle the shocks that life throws at me better than that truck could. And the shocks or the obstacles on this course that were causing that truck to slow down were overwhelming the shock absorbers. And if you look at modern robotics, even the machines made by Boston Dynamics, which really freak me out, their robots are frightening. But still, human beings can outperform them on challenging terrain like what I'm running up right now. A lot of the rocks are covered under the ice and snow, so I'm just dealing with an uneven surface, but not the constant bed of glacial stones that Vermont is covered in. So it wasn't my engine, it was my shock absorbers. And my engine is good, and that experience fueled my engine to greater heights, but it wasn't my engine that won. Just like the video I made yesterday about the Boston Marathon. Des Linden and Yuki, whose last name I still cannot pronounce, they have big engines for sure, but the engines that should have won, according to the narrative in the media, were Galen Rupp and Shillian Flanagan or Molly Huddle, or the Kenyans and Ethiopians. They supposedly have bigger engines, better trained engines, but their shock absorbers weren't as good. So engines were important. Shock absorbers were the deciding factor. And same thing with me racing that truck. Engines were important, but because the conditions were so adverse, they weren't nearly as important as shock absorbers. And you see this in life where we have explained playing fields. And when I mean explained, I mean flattened to the point of near perfection. Frictionless almost, or maximal friction if that's actually going to help propel you, like a rubberized track and track spikes. We want to increase the friction of the toe off so that we can fly through the air with greater speed. We don't want to be running on an ice rink because that would be disadvantageous to a sprinter, but highly advantageous to a hockey skater or a speed skater. But either way, they're tracks that have been specialized to improve performance by reducing obstacle. And you see this in almost every sport where we're flattening the playing fields to a greater and greater degree, and we're going just with engine. We're limiting the variables that yield the greatest performance. So just train, and one very narrow dimension, and you'll win because we've eliminated everything else. And that's great. And it's amazing to watch people achieve new heights, but it's so fragile. It's so fragile. Take those people off those specialized environments, those stadiums, those velodromes, the speed skating rinks, the rubberized tracks. Take their spikes off, put them on a rocky environment, and yeah, their engines will still give them much better than average results. Much, much better. But somebody with much better shock absorbers and a decent engine has a really good chance of beating them. And that's life. At least that's the world. But we try to social engineer the world now to the point where there's no obstacle in front of anyone, thinking that that's going to yield the greatest results. But what it does is it builds fragility. It builds people who fall apart the moment things aren't externally perfect. We build fragility when we flatten the road, carve a tunnel through the road so that the train, or through the mountain, so that the car or the train doesn't have to go over the mountain. They could just sail right through it. So we do an incredible amount of work to make it easier for people when we're actually making life a lot harder, because now we rely on those constraints. We rely on those explanatory efforts. When the power goes out, what do? Who are you when the power goes out now? We've had the craziest windstorms here in Vermont and probably all over the Northeast, and power's going out a lot. A friend of mine said that his power was out for 2 days last week. Who are you when the power's out? Who are you when you can't watch TV? Who are you when you can't surf Facebook or watch YouTube on your phone or play a game? Who are you? Do you want to know? I do. I want to know who I am. So I go into environments where I have to build my shock absorbers, where I have to intentionally put myself in shocking environments, and then very slowly, very gently learn how to move through them, learn how to adapt to them, learn how to keep moving when you're slipping on ice like I just did, learn how to keep climbing when every step requires deliberate, intentional focus and considerable effort, deliberate practice. As Anders Ericsson calls it, this is deliberate practice. And I think that the value in deliberate practice is that it forces you to build your shock absorbers. How much shock can you take and still keep moving? There goes my gimbal. See, my gimbal is losing its engine. So we're gonna make this video crooked now because it's gassed out. So we're gonna use a man-powered gimbal now, which is perfect for my Bigfoot stride. Anyway, people build this external armor, and in a fight, that external armor is only going to do so much, and your character is going to be the deciding factor in most cases. And that's what shock absorbers are. They're building character, and character means to carve. Kar means carve in Greek, and a character is a carved letter in stone. That's when we talk about the characters in a font or in text. They're carvings in stone. That was their original meaning. So a character is the channels or the habits that are carved in you. And right now I'm going up an old roadbed, the old stage road that the stages used to take to get to Woodford or over the mountain before they put Vermont Route 9 in. Because Route 9 goes along a stream, and they had to blast the mountain to be able to put a flat area next to the stream to get the road up. And that was more than people were willing to do in the 1700s and 1800s. So they went up the mountain on this road. And the stream carved a channel, and so did the wagons. So this road becomes a stream in the wetter months because it is a carved channel. It is a habit. And in our lives, we get into ruts, and they can either be good ruts or they can be bad ruts. We can have good habits or bad habits. We can have characters or channels that we flow through that are empowering or disempowering. And if you find yourself inside of a character channel that's disempowering, you can always step out of it. You can climb up out of it and take the path not of least resistance, but of beast resistance, and go through the uncertain terrain, go through the uneven terrain, go through the areas that are going to require shock absorbers, because they're not smooth, they're not habitual, they haven't been explained, you don't know them. Or as they say, the devil that you know is better than the devil you don't know. So people stay in their dangerous, disempowering character channels because at least they know them. They know what to expect. It feels safe, even if it's disempowering. But to go off into the wild, onto the rough terrain, to take the road less traveled, that's frightening. Because you're going to be shocked on a regular basis, which means that your expectations are not going to be met. But that's the biggest problem with human beings, is that we have expectations. And this is why I'm such a big fan of Buddhist psychology, because it's all about deflating your expectations and working with what you've got rather than what you expected to get. And that's a shock. When our expectations are not met, when our predictions are in error, that's shocking. How do you handle it? Who are you in the midst of that? What kind of character do you have? Because I don't care how big your engine is. I don't care if you're a four-wheel drive truck with giant knobby tires and a ridiculous suspension. I'm going to beat you up the mountain. Not because of my engine, but because of my shock absorbers. Because of my character. Because I choose to always take the road less traveled. Gently. Slowly, calmly, and with curiosity. And I am now at the summit of the mountain. I'm in Woodford at about 2,400 feet in elevation. And there's a lot of snow up here. All right, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you like my channel, subscribe. I have a lot more coming. And if you want to help me do more of this, to explore character, to explore the path of beast resistance, to explore who you are in the midst of missed expectations, come to Patreon. $1 or $2 a month. That's it. Not 50, not 100, $1 or $2 a month. And you help me do this. And you help me finish my books a hell of a lot faster than I'm able to finish them otherwise. All right. I'll see you soon. Peace.